Hey everybody, welcome to the Purpose People podcast. I have an adrenaline junkie on today. His name is Ray and he's from BizSpace. So welcome to the sofa.
How you doing, Darrell? Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
I chucked adrenaline junkie in there because I know you're prone to jumping out of planes.
Yeah, I like
Tom Cruise has got nothing on you.
Well, I don't know. I think he's got a fair few zeros on me. It's just something that I like to sort of. It's the endorphins, isn't it? The dopamine hits and things like that. Anything that gets the blood pressure up, I quite like it.
Yeah. So you run BizSpace, which is based in Cardiff, which is like a co-working space.
Yeah.
You've done various different careers, but how did you end up doing that?
It's a bit of a long story, to be honest. I kind of fell into it. Just like a lot of people, I suppose, at the moment, pandemic just put a lot of things into perspective. But my background's always been sales. My first ever job, I was a hygiene operative for a restaurant called the Hungry Fox in Broadclyst in Devon. And to you and I, what that basically means is I was a dishwasher. And yeah, that was my first sort of take on sort of work. And then I didn't really like it very much, so I came a bit work shy for a fair amount of time there afterwards, just potted about. But yeah, I've sold suits, Sky and Telewest in the middle of a shopping centre, but predominantly it's been cars. I was in the motor trade for 15 years, worked in various sort of different roles and things like that, worked my way sort of up to being a general manager, running a dealership. And lockdown struck and it just completely changed the industry. So I decided enough was enough. It was time to get out. Sort of managed to negotiate an exit. And yeah, took about 8 or 9 months off. Now it was a bit of a perfect storm, to be fair, because at the time I was going through sort of leaving the industry. My mum had only just relocated to South Wales,
right,
and her husband passed shortly after living there. So at the exact same time as me leaving the trade, my mum was suddenly a widow, and it worked out quite nicely because it meant that I can spend the time going back and forth from Devon to South Wales to sort of support her, help organise the funeral arrangements and sort of things like that. And I kind of just fell in love with the place and sort of stayed.
So it's quite interesting because you ended up, you obviously working in an entrepreneurial world because it's just full of businesses, right? And it's a very different world from selling cars, I guess. But ultimately, I guess you're still selling. You're still trying to get people on board. But I guess what you get now is more maybe diversity of thought and diversity of character and people looking to do some different things.
Yeah, I mean, the motor industry's very, very much unscrupulously selling. It's prospecting day in, day out. It's very much about the close and trying to manage objections and overcome those sort of things that would prevent people from saying that magic word. Yes.
Yeah.
Whereas doing what I'm doing now, it's about 20% sort of sales and 80% relationships. So you get to know the person at the core. You get to understand the why behind what it is that they're doing, which is really important to me these days. And once you've sort of got somebody that's actually taken up office space or uses the building for co-working, it's about getting to understand them, what pain points they're going through, what challenges they're sort of facing, and looking after them and trying to do your best to sort of facilitate the bridge between what their sticking points are. So yeah, it's very similar in some respects, but very, very different at the same time.
So what sort of role do you find yourself playing in the lives of those businesses? Do you find yourself you talk about relationship, do you find yourself more encouraging them? Because obviously the entrepreneurial world is very up and down. Yeah. And I don't think people teach you that. You just experience it, and then you're probably you're seeing it in all the businesses that are there. So I guess you're a bit of a cheerleader, maybe.
Well, it's you are exactly that. You're there with your pom poms and everything else dancing. But we work very closely with as many of them as we can do. Not everybody wants to be. Some people want to keep their sort of cards close to their chests. Yeah. Other people, we've got businesses that are just starting off to multinational FTSE 200 companies and everything in between. For me, it's just about people. I'm a big people person. I like to understand what makes people tick.
Yeah.
I call it nosy. Everybody else tells me that I should use curious and things like that. But deep-rootedly, I'm nosy. I want to really sort of understand what makes people do what it is that they do.
Yeah.
And, it's about, once you understand the why behind what it is, you then get a bit of their purpose. And sometimes you've got to pick people up off the ground, because it is dark on some days. It can be lonely.
Yeah.
You get to sort of be a little bit of a part of their team as well. So the brainstorming sessions that they do, they'll run ideas past you. You get to sort of take parts in the trials. You get to sort of guide them through your own experiences. So, while I've never owned my own business, I've managed several over the years and things like that. And it's the walks of life that you get from day to day that they don't necessarily understand or have thought about from an outside of the box sort of thing. So it's cheerleading, it's problem solving, it's supporting. Sometimes it's telling them that actually, do you know what, you're winding up the wrong path and you need to maybe come back a little bit. And it's just I suppose it's just being there.
Which is interesting, because obviously you would have, I think you were like were you the first person running BizSpace?
No. Oh. There was somebody before me. They'd been there for 3 years before.
Oh, okay.
But it was mostly during the pandemic. So
it was quite empty when you first took over.
Yeah. It was a building site when I took over. They just started massive refurbishment on the building. So when I walked through the door on day one, and it was just a shell. It's a 40-year-old building, and it literally was just concrete and windows. Seeing it sort of go through the refurbishment stages and thinking that's never going to be ready on time, and it wasn't. Through all of the differences and the difficulties through Brexit, through the COVID-19 situation and everything else, we were delayed by about 5 months.
Wow.
When we officially launched, we had about 4 businesses in the building.
Yeah, because I remember going to an early couple of events, and I remember the occupancy not being very high because you had just started. But so what happened? Because I feel that through the pandemic, it was like everyone's going to work from home. That's it, and it was like no one needs offices or whatever. And then what I saw is that people that had the co-working spaces as they merged out was probably the best solution for offices. So why sign up for a free 5-10 year lease? And like the model that you guys have, you pay so much for a desk, or you can get 4 or 6 or 8 or whatever, even much bigger. But it's like one fee covers a lot, covers everything. And then as you come out of COVID, I was like, that's the future of how people will go to the office, because they don't want to go, business owners don't want a 5-10 year lease anymore. It's like this model kind of suits everybody. And then there's a lot of companies where if they miss that camaraderie, they can get a desk with you and go and work there.
It is. I mean, on that side of things, we literally do everything. So we do co-working, we do meeting room hires, we do event space, we've got offices that can be physically yours for, as short as a month to as long as however long you want. We can fit people from 1 person all the way up to 200 people. So while we do a little bit of the co-working and the collaboration spaces, we do those traditional sort of leases, traditional business spaces. But it's about having that flexibility now. I think, a bit like myself with coming out of the motor trade, it's put things into perspective. Quality of life, work-in balance and things like that have really sort of come to the sort of the forefront of most of us. And as a business, you've got to make sure that you understand that you've got to play to the strengths of the people that are on your team. So, you might have a sort of a heavy hitter, sort of real corporate minded person that really, really loves that office environment. So they need to have somewhere as a base of operations. You've got those other people that may equally be a heavy hitter corporate sort of person, but they're little bit more inclusive, and they don't necessarily want to make the commute into work. You know, they've got a good setup at home, or you know, they want to have that flexibility of working the hours that suits for them.
Yeah.
So as a business, you've got to look at the sort of the landscape. You know, it's not 9 to 5, clocking in, clocking out.
What's the trend there? Because I'm obviously seeing London. So London is now almost quite quiet Monday and Friday. Do you find that?
Yeah.
Monday and Friday is quite quiet, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is when everyone uses the office.
Wednesday's a bit of a hit and miss day. If
Is
it
it
was
really?
a day like today, it will be dead.
Wow.
If it's raining, it will be busy. But Mondays and Fridays are pretty much a bit of a ghost town these days.
Wow. So that's interesting. So it's interesting to see the trends because, you know, like, because we made a decision as a team, the creative agency, we went fully remote. Why was that? Because out of mixture of freelancers and the team members, we probably had about 14 people. 2 were using the office. Now it might be in a different 2, but it just wasn't. It just didn't make any sense.
Viable option, isn't it? You know, you've got to. Again, the same with a lot of things when it comes to sort of business that I've known over the years, but also have learned sort of more so now, is you can't set your watch by anything anymore. You know, you mentioned about, you know, it used to be sort of 5-10 year leases and things like that. The problem is you don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. There could be another situation like COVID that really sort of ruffles the feather of whatever the industry is. You've got emerging technologies like AI and sort of blockchains and things like that, which are, again, disruptors to some industries and elevators to others.
Yeah.
You know, you can't sort of tie yourself to the ground and also be able to sort of keep moving forwards. So having that flexibility is so important to a lot of people.
And that's why I kind of like your model, is that the flexibility is, because you know, there's some of the team would say, you know what, actually, I don't mind being in the office. If there's one if there's one near me, then maybe we'd just hire a desk, for example, in the location that they're at. So it's quite interesting to see the trends change. And I think we are finding this bit of hybrid.
Yeah.
I think certainly the industries that we're in, with web work, it's normally you're doing coding or you've got your headphones on and you're working, and it's actually quite good because you're not being disturbed by anybody. But I think more the creative stuff, or particularly the video stuff, you need that team. You need to be with one another.
Yeah, and you've got to remember, sometimes we kind of stay within our own little bubble as well. You know, you can't forget those industries that are still core Monday to Friday 9 till 5. Call centers, taxi companies, hospitals. You know, you've got your corporate legal work and things like that, where you know there is always going to be your structure and your routine, and COVID won't really disrupt them too much from a normal flow.
I was just thinking, a taxi driver saying, "I'm working from home today."
Yeah. Well, you know, those days will come with the
they will come,
old,
won't they?
Self-driving cars.
Yeah, self-driving cars.
Like
They just swipe them in, swipe them out, pick you up and drive. Yeah, it's quite interesting. But, you know, for me, it's like the trends in working. What sort of trends? Because obviously you're working with a whole load of businesses. What sort of trends are you seeing in the way people work? You said, like, there's a lot of flexible working, I guess. Are you seeing any other sort of emergent trends that you see?
I think unfortunately, the biggest trend that I'm seeing is a bit of a negative.
Okay.
The biggest trend that I'm getting is a lot of people with remote are getting lonely. You know, those sort of human sort of connections and things like that. You've got people that are striving to sort of have that collaborative sort of spaces, which again, we're really lucky being a core city centre. We've got a business lounge. It will sit up to sort of 55 different people, as well as all of the other different spaces. So let's just take you and flash back to when you first left your sort of corporate world and started creation on your own. You know, you were there, you were plugging away and everything else, and I don't know the full setup, but you need people to bounce ideas off.
100%.
You need people to sort of remind you that actually, do you know what? It's okay not to be okay. You need somebody to sort of say to you that actually keep going.
Yeah.
The only time that you fail is when you stop. And I think that more people need to sort of step out of those comforts of working from home and put themselves into some of these collaboration spaces. You know, amazing if it's with us, but there are so many different versions, because you can really sort of elevate yourself by bouncing ideas in
Agreed.
person.
I think what I found within because I was in an entrepreneurial hub, so when we took creation out the charitable setup and we started again, essentially, we went into a hub in Bristol. So it was a top floor of beautiful buildings overlooking like the city, which is stunning. But it was full of founders and owners, and I think that was probably the best thing about it, because we're all trying to do the same thing, and very rare. Because even if you have your own office, it's normally the leadership team and everybody else. It's not, you work or whatever, but in essence, that's what it's like. When you're in an entrepreneurial hub or a co-working space and you've got founders and owners as well, you're talking about building businesses. You're not talking about, like actual delivery so much. You're talking more about the vision. And I remember being stood there at they used to run a thing on a Wednesday afternoon. It's like 4:00 to 6:00. And we used to have the conversation along the lines, you won't get this environment again, because we were like doing it in like 6-month blocks, or the maximum you could run it to is about 18 months. But after that, you'll never be in an environment quite like that. And I think unless you go to somewhere like yourself. And the community aspect was, whenever they did the review, what was everyone thought about, they'd always bring up community.
I know of the types of hubs, and there's so many, again, different versions of it. Some are good, some are bad, some are in the middle, and everything else. But it is as much what you bring to the table as what you take from it. The actual sort of business development side of those types of HUDs is probably only about 30-40% of what you go there for. You go there for that community. You go there to sort of bounce ideas off of people. You go there, it really is a case of sharing knowledge. Business is something that it's like driving lessons, isn't it?
Yeah.
You don't really learn to drive until you've got that certificate and you go out for the first time on your own. Until you take that first step, you don't really know what it's like.
Yeah.
But when you've got people around you that are, doing the same sort of thing, you can be on the first rung of the ladder, or you can be on the top of the ladder, sort of about to sort of cash the check and sort of retire. But there is always somebody that has an experience that will help you overcome whatever the challenge is.
Yeah, and I think that it's like that shared knowledge, the ability to converse with one another and say, I've got this challenge, or I've got this, how did you get around it? And I always remember they had like white walls that were painted where you could draw on the walls, and then you could wipe them off. That was like the best. And you're sometimes talking whilst drawing on the wall, and then afterwards you wipe it off. But it was just that sense of collaboration with business owners.
It's only ever as good as if you remember which wall's been painted on, because I'm sure at some point somebody's drawn on the wrong wall.
One of our guys put some sellotape. So they used the wall, and they put we were storyboarding something. They put sellotape, and they pulled it off, and it pulled the thing off. And they literally have to redo the entire wall. Thankfully, they're insured and they were gracious with us. But every time we went in there, they put a little pen mark around it and go, "That was creation." But it was a good space where you could. I mean, I remember I had one guy, top guy named Levon, and he spent a day with me, and we literally wrote on every single wall. And then there was a wall the other side, so we wrote on that wall, and then we wrote on all the glass. But the amount of stuff that I managed to get spending that time with him was great. But I wouldn't get that. You wouldn't get that just as your own in a business, like in your own space. You'd have to invite a consultant in, and so on and so forth. So I really do love that collaborative thing, and that's why I like networking, because I know, Ray, you do a lot of networking as well. So do you want to just tell us a little bit about networking? Because there is that saying, you're only as strong.
What is it?
Your network.
Your
net worth.
Your net worth is your network.
Yeah.
I don't know who said it. I've tried to sort of find out who said it.
I reckon I come up with it about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And it just went. It went all over the place.
But it's funny because networking is, again, just flashing back. So in my motor industry days, we used to have showrooms. So we used to clear the cars out, a bit like what you guys do with some of the events that you host. We'll clear the cars out, we'll get some caterers in, and we'll host the networking event.
Yeah.
And we'll just walk around and have a mingle and try to plug some sales and things like that. And that was what I thought networking was.
Yeah.
So I came to Cardiff, got into this world, and I went networking. And I walked in there, and everybody that I went up to, I would literally go, "Hiya, I'm Ray, I'm from BizSpace. where do you work? Oh, I'm at home. I'm like, do you want an office? And it was literally go for the jugular. Straight away, it was just sell, sell, sell.
Yeah.
And I very quickly remembered, through all of the different years that I was in the motor industry, the best way to sort of get sales is be a person first, build that rapport, understand what the problem is, and then see about finding a solution for it. And I tried that approach and it didn't quite work quite right. And what really works is just getting to know the person. Don't worry about your sales pitch. To a certain degree, don't worry about your business card. Networking is about actually building that real sort of connection with somebody. You and I, we've got a bit of an understanding of each other about, what your family is, what your hobbies are, why you do what you do, when you started it, what your background was. Now, if I know somebody is looking at a bit of web development, brand sort of focus, all of the things that you sort of do, you're somebody that always pops into my head. And you have your sort of key people that you've got in your back pocket, so to speak. Yeah. That it's almost like pulling out a card to say, okay, there you go and have a word with Darrell.
Yeah.
So networking I think is starting to come back. I think from an outsider relatively new to it in the last sort of 2 years, I think that it's a little bit broken in some respects.
Yeah.
I think people are not really purposeful, to use your own sort of branding there. I don't think people are purposeful. I think you've got a new school of people that are coming into networking, a bit like myself, that don't necessarily have the sort of the experience to understand that it's not just about sort of selling.
Yeah.
So I think networking for me, I was brand new to Cardiff. I didn't know anybody.
And now you know loads.
And I've got some really, really strong friendships that I met through networking.
And I think that's the key, is that I think because of the remote working side of things, I think it's actually an opportunity to elevate networking. It's like when we gather. So when I talked about the community thing where you're in an entrepreneurial hub and you've got all the leaders. Now, if people are remote working or whatever, then those leaders then gather at those networking events because they're not gathering in a hub so much. And that's probably the biggest shift I've seen, is that when I go to a lot of networking events now, you're often seeing the founder or the CEO attending, whereas I think in the past it was like,
BDMs and sales
guys. Can you just go instead of me? And I think that's changed now because they're not getting out either, and so interesting enough, a couple of the people that I know in the car industry, the main guys are out at networking now more than anything else. So I think networking has found its space again. I mean, obviously there's online networking that we've all done, which, is okay.
It's got its place.
It got its reach and it helped us through the pandemic. I do enjoy it, in short bursts. I don't like standing or sitting or whatever on Zoom for like 2 hours, 3 hours. I just couldn't think of anything worse now to be on a seminar for 3 hours on Zoom. But I think networking has changed. I think your space is what you've got with that big area. It's obviously become a really good space. And I know I've gone to a few networking events there, and you've got one on yourself.
Yeah, I was just about to take a sip, but no. So I've literally just
don't miss an opportunity.
No, exactly. So throughout all of the networking and things like that, there are greats. There are so many different people that do things brilliantly in their own sort of way, and they're all diverse.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest things that I still notice doesn't quite sort of happen massively is that social element isn't quite there within the networking. Yeah. You probably get your 20% of the people that go to networking are the same sort of faces that truly sort of understand it's about getting to know the person.
Yeah.
We go to the Indro Biz events, and we've got a handful of people that we know and see and things like that, and you go for those sort of relationships and to see who you're going to get new.
Yeah.
But you don't get masses of sort of social ties out of them as such. So I launched something, and I don't really like to use the term networking because I don't do bitches. I don't do business cards.
Yeah.
We just do a social environment.
Okay.
We look at getting some inspirational sort of people that have gone through challenges and have come out the other side.
Yeah.
So
of course.
we've sort of very, very young It's only been going. We've done 6. We've got an upcoming event which will be our 6th event.
Okay.
We've fallen on our face a couple of times through it, and we've had some really great sort of results with it. And for me, that's the fun of it. It's the
Progress,
sort of,
not perfection.
It's the tripping over and sort of thinking, do you know, that hurt. You know,
Yeah.
I always say it, I'm quite an anecdotal person, as you know. When, you know, a kid learns to walk by tripping over and scuffing its knees.
Yeah.
You know, if it didn't hurt itself, it wouldn't bother getting up off of the floor.
That's it. Failure.
So yeah, we focus more on the social than the actual the networking, and we find that business and partnerships have sort of been built even in that sort of small time. So I think people are eager for that sort of real sort of connection again now.
Yeah, I think there are different networks doing different things, and I think it's finding what makes you unique. You know, we do a thing, humans, which is what I run it. It's all about being happier, healthier, smarter, and kinder, and that's created its own crowd that are very different from, let's say, the introverts crowd. You know, and I think life is made up of tribes, and I think you don't have to be exclusively for one, but you can go to a different one for a different thing. It's how I kind of lived my life with my different friendship groups. I had like my football mates, and then I had my business colleagues, and then, you know, so I always had pockets of people. I think my business networking looks a bit like that as well.
Yeah,
you know.
Well, we focus more on those sort of really early years.
Yeah.
Because again, there's those sort of hubs that people go to, like we were talking about before, but once you've left those hubs, after you've been there for a year, it's like, okay, there you go. You've packed your bag, you've left home, don't come back. But it's somewhere to come where you can sort of really sort of like take your humans and things like that. I've never been to one yet, but I keep meaning and promising to sort of get across
advertising
to one.
here now to just
but it's,
subliminal messages.
It's like you'll have people that meet at those sort of places, and they've got a real sort of like they get a click instantly and things like that.
Yeah.
Well, they can either go and meet in their own time, or that's where we want to sort of step in and be that sort of like halfway house, be a bit of a feeder for the likes of you guys, be a feeder for all of the other different networking groups, and be somewhere where you can meet up and have those follow-ups, have those one-to-ones, but still get that collaboration and still get to make new connections, and also hear somebody's story. A bit like what you guys do, but maybe more focused on the sort of the business challenges rather than the sort of the life challenges, I guess.
It's quite an interesting one because I look at your role within BizSpace, and you've kind of gone down the whole salesy route. You almost got like a bit of a pastoral role, I'd say, within the business space, where you're like looking after people, keeping an eye out for them, and obviously you want to keep the occupation up high, but I think people stay with you because of you and your interest in their businesses.
Yeah, thank you. It is a bit of a shepherd's role, I guess.
That's what I'm saying.
You know, I
you sort of like when you start talking about it, you can see that it's like, I really care about the people.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Then it's like you get to know the person in the business and the struggles and the successes and things like that, and you're on that journey with them.
Yeah.
You're not part of their business,
no,
but you are part of their journey. And if you can help, then I think you should. Again, with the motor trade was a great part of my life.
Yeah.
The sort of the friendships, the relationships, the skills. It's not looked on as a sort of a halo job, I guess.
No, but it's sharp end of sales, and I think I think there's a couple of people I know that are in that industry, and they've become students of sales. You know, they're doing that as the job, and that's their outlet. But I'm sure at some point they'll go and do something else because they're learning their craft there.
Well, it's very diverse.
Yeah.
Again, when you're sort of like, if you follow the sort of the path that I did, I went through sales. My partner at the time, mother of the kids, wanted to get back into work, and it's a hard job. It's 10, 12 hours a day. It's 5.5 days a week.
Yeah.
You don't want to take your days off because you're missing opportunities. So your phone's always on. You're always responding to emails. And my partner wanted to get back into work. And it meant that it would mean that we'd have to sacrifice, the kids. It would mean that we'd have to sacrifice time together. It would mean that we'd have to sacrifice money wholeheartedly for childcare.
Yeah.
So we sort of sat down and discussed it, and I pivoted from sales into after sales.
Yeah.
So it was always a sort of goal of mine to sort of run a dealership. And I thought, well, instead of leaving the dealership that I was at, the franchise, the manufacturer that I was with, I can take a little bit of a sidestep. I can pivot across, get a bit of a holistic view of the business, and moved over to the after sales. Now that freed up the constraints of weekends and things, and it gave her the opportunity to sort of go back into work and everything else. So you learn everything in there. You know, sales isn't just about a case of doing a sort of product breakdown and then sort of just, here's the price, do you want to go for it, yes or no? You know, you've got to have a technical understanding. You've got to have a sort of an understanding of psychology to be able
100%.
to understand the people. You know, you've got to be able to understand numbers and everything else. And when you sort of link that back into sort of what we do now, you actually are able to offer advice to somebody from a factual sort of background where you've got real world experiences. You know, you can have a laugh with them at the same time and remind them that actually, do you know what? It is a serious thing to build your own business and achieve what you want to, but don't take life too seriously, because none of us are getting out of it alive. And again, in the building, I've made some great friendships. And I think that's important to remember, that actually, do you know what? Going on the journey on your own isn't necessarily always the right way to do it.
No, and I think the outworking of that sales thing and you moving into aftercare is almost like purpose in itself was moving you into the looking after and building communities and helping people, as opposed to, you know, going for that sale and whatever. But I think sales have changed massively as well. Yes. I think it's gone more from selling to serving. And when people say, well, you know, that's another snappy headline, but the reality is people don't like being sold to.
Well, I don't think people.
I think they got a bit more savvy.
To go back to when I first started. When I first started in sales, specifically in the motor industry, you used to have 7 touch points with a person before, you know, you would buy on average.
Yeah.
So it meant that a customer would come into the showroom, leave, come into the showroom, leave, come into the showroom and leave. You know, when I was leaving, that was on average of about 1.5, 1.7. And from what I understand now, it started to increase again.
Okay.
But you've also got to remember that during the pandemic, you never got to meet the customer. It was all online.
Yeah.
The reason why people would come into us was because they didn't know the car, they didn't know the specifications, didn't know the safety. So they would come in to ask questions. They'd go away, they'd do a bit more research, they'd come in, ask some more questions, take it for another drive. Nowadays, the internet's amazing. You know, you've got a mobile phone in your pocket, you can reach out and you can research anything in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays you've got the likes of AI that's emerging, which is just taking that sort of research, you know, one step further again. People don't need salespeople to tell them how good a product is anymore.
Yeah.
What they want is somebody, if something goes wrong, they can come back to.
It's an interesting one because we needed tyres, and you know, you run them to as close as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Well, I do anyway. And we had to get the brakes done in the car, and then they do like a little video and they tell you what you need to do, and you know, oh, here we go. Every time it goes in, there's the upsell. But me and Claire was like, we got a garage just down the road here, and they're probably one of the only garages I know that still fill your car up.
Yeah.
So you can't fill it up. You have to pull up and they come out and go, hi, how you doing, sir? And they fill up. And we get on well with them. Really nice guy, whatever. But because we were so used to the customer service, we said, I don't care how much more we're going to have to pay if we go with that main dealer. We'd rather buy tyres from this guy. And that's what we did. We went to him. And actually, comparatively, I think we only ended up spending an extra £10 a tyre. But I'd rather give them the business than the big company. Yeah. Why? Because of customer service. He took an interest in us, helped us out, filled our tyres with air when we're like, oh, can you just top it up before we get our new tyres? You know, that sort of stuff. Customer service, everything.
It's customer service, but it's also experience.
Yeah.
you look at the Apple model with their sort of shops. It's about the experience.
Yeah.
It's funny you use that. I think we're going to go back to that. I think we're going to return to that sort of experience. I think you'll see a lot more collaborations as well. If you look at the high streets, the way that those are dying and things as well. I think the high street will become much more of an experience centre. I feel that you'll see the likes of Nike and Adidas shops incorporating and working with a gym franchise.
It's a good
you'll
point.
see maybe a gym will... you see it in some of the gyms like David Lloyd's and things where they have, the sort of the restaurant cafe type things in there. They'll have a masseuse that goes into there. You'll see a lot more of those partnerships where the sort of the synergy between their product and their product works together, so they'll actually band together.
It's a really good point, because I think that's why the department store kicked, obviously 50, 60, 70 years ago, because people would go in and they go to the different areas, but then there was that concierge service. Whereas I think retail just become lazy. Yeah. You just walk in and it's like, it's over there.
Yeah, it's a row, it's a sea of things.
Oh, it's just at the back. It's like,
You won't,
really?
I think it will be the same way as what it is like with Apple. You can't necessarily get things off the shelf and go to the till.
No.
They will probably incorporate the online into the journey.
Yeah.
But it will be a case of you go in, you'll get an experience, you'll get a full sort of rundown of it. You might be able to... You take where you do your humans thing the other day. That is all about experience.
100%.
And linking it back to my experiences, the Japanese methodology is amazing.
Yeah.
They've got something over there called omotenashi, which is all about hospitality.
Yeah.
You walk into a business, you walk into a restaurant, a cafe, and it's the same as walking into that person's house.
Yeah.
They will give you a level of service that you won't find anywhere else.
And I think you're right. I mean, that's where we've become so... If you just want to buy it from Amazon and get it delivered to you with no fee. But when people are looking for a bigger spend, they want that customer interaction. They want that trust. They want that knowledge. You're not going to... Because you could buy a car and click out completely. You could literally do the whole thing online and check out. But people don't, because they want to question. And I think the brands that do put that extra mileage in terms of a person, that concierge, that engagement with, you can invest online if you want to. But if you're going to invest properly, you want to talk to someone, right? And I think you're right. I think that's
people will always buy from people.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to take it all the way back, hundreds of thousands of years. You mentioned the word earlier, tribe.
Yeah.
We are all stemmed from tribes.
Yeah.
And whether we want to admit it, know it, or realize it, we're actually trying to get there back.
Yeah.
But social media, devices, things like that, unfortunately, is that, no, I'm going to keep you over here. I'm going to keep you in this sort of like mindset that actually, do you know what? All of the information's in front of me. My friends are in front of me. I don't need to have that human interaction. But we keep getting pulled back.
No, I think we do.
And people will always buy from people. But I don't think people will always be sold to by people.
No, but then
choose to buy from the particular person.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to what you do. Ultimately, it's just space with chairs and desks. But the thing that makes it is the people, and the thing that makes it are the people that are involved in that business. And if they feel that you as a business or you as a person care about their business, they're more than likely go with you as opposed to everybody else, or stay with you because they feel that you understand and where they're heading. And they don't want to go somewhere else and re-explain the whole journey again. So, for me, I think you're right. I think there's definitely going back to that customer experience, that customer journey, that people thing. I do believe it's going to make a comeback, because I think people that don't like the sterile click, it benefits the top
don't get me
people at the
wrong.
top.
I'm a real people person.
Yeah.
But it's like I'm quite reactive with sort of purchases and things like that. I don't realize I need it until I need it, and then I'll go straight online. But if I've got something that I want, it's a desire of mine. It's like, do you know what? That is really, really nice. I'm going to get that. I will go in. I will make sure that I'm speaking to the person. I will get to know them as much as what I need to know about the sort of the equipment. Because if I'm going to go to that effort of waiting, saving, researching, I'm going to want to know that if something goes wrong, that I do have somebody that I can come back to.
Yeah.
But also, it's a case of like, well, if I don't know how to use it, I'm going to go back and ask somebody,
There you go.
Or if, I want to make a recommendation, then I'll recommend that they go back to them. But I'll do all of my research online.
And I think and for me, that's how I see the space, is that your research and that can be done online, but still practically when you're executing, you want to be around people to help you on the journey. So thank you so much.
No, it's been
an amazing time. How do people get in touch with you, Ray?
No, so we're on LinkedIn, Raymond Lang, and BizSpace is bizspace.co.uk.
Yeah. And you're based in Cardiff?
Yep, Cardiff, but we've got 70 odd sites up and down the country. So
fantastic. Well, it's been absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant to have you talk about all things.
Yeah.
You got my mind whirring now about customer service and stuff. But
it's vital.
Thanks for spending some time with us and making the effort to come all the way.
No, I appreciate you having me on, Darrell. It's been it's been an experience.
Awesome. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. You can obviously see us on YouTube, where you can see our wonderful setting here that we film every time we do a podcast. But you can also listen to us just in your ears on Apple, Amazon, Spotify, and Google. Please like and subscribe to YouTube, and please leave a review on our podcast. It really helps us get the message out that can help people live a life on purpose for purpose. We want to help you make purpose a priority.